He thinks you should own a machine gun and silencers and short barrel shotguns and a lot of other things. He started with one little camcorder, and now he's got millions of followers. It's Mr. Guns and Gear. Gun Talk Nation is brought to you by Safariland, We Save Lives, Remington Ammunition, Crossbreed Holsters, and Arms Corps. All right, welcome in to another episode of Gun Talk Nation. This Gun Talk Nation, we've got a guy who is a mystery wrapped within a conundrum. He goes by many names, but it's Mike from Mr. Guns and Gear. Welcome in, man.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So if you don't know, you probably do. If you follow what Gun Talk does, you probably follow other gun channels out there. Mr. Guns and Gear has been at it for a long time. You've got millions of followers on multiple platforms. Where can people find you? How'd you get started? Give them a little background.
Sure. So how I got started is kind of a long story, but it was my then girlfriend, current wife. Her first gun was a brand new Glock 19 Gen 4, right when they first came out. So probably 11 or 12 years ago. And they had problems. For folks that don't remember back then, they had a lot of problems and they were denying it. And basically I sent the gun into Glock to get fixed. I was a Glock armorer prior to that. And they sent it back saying that it was all within specs and didn't replace anything, even though it was malfunctioning 3-4 times a mag with good ammo. So I made a video, like literally just point shoot, no editing, no nothing, of me shooting it, showing that I was gripping it correctly, etc. So all the trolls could be quiet, and just showing the malfunctions. And I uploaded it to YouTube so I could embed it in the forums. And then back then on YouTube, people could see your Gmail address. So the VP of marketing for Glock USA emailed me and was like, hey, let's get that gun back and get you a new one that works. And then he was like, when the gun came back, he was like, hey, can you make another video showing that it works? And I was like, sure. I didn't know anything about YouTube at all. I mean, like literally nothing. And those were my first 2 videos for like 2 years. So the only videos on the channel. And then somebody asked me on a forum, hey, I asked you a question in the comments and you never replied. I didn't even know there was comments on the videos. I had no idea. So I went to the comment section and there was a bunch of questions that people were asking. So I just started making videos answering their questions essentially. And that's how the channel started. And it's evolved from there to be like an actual production where I edit videos and things like that.
Yeah.
Whereas back then I didn't do that. But yeah, so it's grown a lot. My old videos are a little bit cringy for me to watch, but that's how we all grow.
Yeah, that's the way it is for all of us. Mm-hmm. But it's funny because and that story is a perfect example of how, not just in the gun world, but certainly in the gun world, of how we've said before that companies aren't really allowed to make bad products anymore. Mm-hmm. You can't get away with it. And that's, again, beyond the gun world too. But right. I mean, people can just shoot it, video it, post it with their phones. It's really easy. And that's been mostly a good thing for shooters, for, gun owners out there.
Absolutely. There are very few guns that are factory production guns that you purchase these days that don't work, at least a large sample size of them. I mean, a few come to mind, but I don't know if you want me saying them on your show, but there's very few. And exactly, it's for the reason you said. Like a good example I use on my channel is Taurus. I've reviewed Tauruses for years. I have a good relationship with Taurus. I've shown several of their guns literally not working at all. Mm-hmm. And they still, like, because in my opinion, anyway, this is my belief and from my communication with them, they want their products to be good. So they appreciate the fair criticism, right? But over the last 2 years, I'd say, I haven't heard of any bad Tauruses. I mean,
I completely agree with that. That's a brand that some people, if they don't follow up, they're thinking of the Taurus from 10 years ago, Taurus. And I agree totally. Like lately, last few years, I mean, the guns I've shot, I've had no problems with. And I say that because I want to give them credit. Like they've been working on it and it's taken kind of a long time, but definitely have improved the products. And I agree. I mean, most stuff out there is pretty good. And that's why it's kind of funny for you and I when people are like, well, what's a good gun? You're like, I mean, there's a lot of good guns.
There are so many. We live in the golden age of firearms and optics and accessories, really flashlights as well. I mean, like I've told the story before, but I went to the police academy in the 1990s. So yeah, I am that old. But we had back then, the new 60 lumen mag light came out. It was like a double D cell.
Right.
And like our instructors were like raving about it, about like how awesome and powerful it was. And nowadays, like literally the Streamlight Micro Stream, which is this big by like the size of this pen, is way more powerful than that light.
Right.
Yeah. I mean,
and rechargeable and all this other stuff. Yeah. All right. So I told you I wanted to get into this because I think it's worth talking about. I think it's interesting. Talk about your journey with owning NFA products, but specifically machine guns, silencers, that type of thing. And then let's kind of get into why people listening to this should own them.
Sure. So let me reference something I just put up on my Instagram and all my social media yesterday. It was a graph that I saw. I don't remember who it was from, maybe the American Silencer Association, maybe. But it basically was a graph showing by timeline the amount of silencers registered in America. And it showed that over 90% of silencers registered in America have been registered in the last 10 years.
Yeah.
And that's an astonishing amount. And the reason I thought for that is twofold. I would say probably 90% responsibility for that rise is social media folks like myself and you, showing them responsibly being used, legally being used. I have tutorials on how to fill out the paperwork to buy them. I have tutorials on wait times. I have all of those sorts of things. I'd say probably like that increase is 90% due to social media types, folks using them and showing them. And then additionally, probably 10% video games, adding to that as well. But in my opinion, that is a very good thing. And one thing that I try to do with both NFA items, whether they be short barrel shotguns, silencers, machine guns, whatever the case may be, is show sort of like the reality of them, if you will. Like I do silencer decibel testing, explaining that they're not really silent, but they do help in a lot of ways as well. There's pros and cons to them, but I think they should be normalized in America. And one way to do that through our legal system anyway, as it's currently constructed, is just to have more of them, right? So the more of them there are in the country, then they become something that's legally referred to as common use. It's been cited in many Second Amendment cases as a reason to allow for Americans to be able to own an item, whether it be a handgun, which has been used in that case as well, or any other number of items like magazines or whatever. So if there are, 40 million silencers, then it's very easy to have legal standing or legal ground saying that they're common use. Everybody has them. It's very difficult to take them away. And perhaps going forward, they should just be removed from the NFA because they're already so common as it is. And obviously I have my SOT, so I'm able to legally produce and own machine guns as well. So I produce lots of machine guns. And the reason I do it is for the same reason, to have more machine guns in circulation and to normalize the ownership of those machine guns.
I love the strategy because you're right. In common use, it's a phrase that is a legal phrase that the justices or whoever's trying these cases that are out there, they're basically going, well, do people even own this stuff? Because you got to understand, the lawyers, the judges, they're not necessarily gun people, right? And they don't understand or know much about the subject at all. But if you say, well, actually, yes, AR-15s, whatever you want to call them from in the media, but AR-15s are in common use. And Absolutely. It's the most popular rifle being owned in America as far as a style goes. And you're right. If there's 40 million silencers out there, and then the follow-up to that is, and there haven't really been any problems. Right. Well, then why are we trying to put unnecessary restrictions on millions and millions of Americans out there on this muffler?
Correct. I mean, I agree wholeheartedly.
The tricky part is machine guns. I guess, maybe explain the difference between, what you can buy as far as an existing machine gun, obviously manufactured after 1986, versus making a machine gun.
As an SOT, you're asking?
Right.
Okay. So there's several different categories of machine guns that you can purchase as an SOT. One is considered, like they call it, with a LE letter. So for instance, if my local police department or sheriff's department, or really actually any law enforcement unit. If they wanted to get, say, an MP7 in and they wanted to test it out for their department, I, as a SOT, can reach out to HK and say, hey, send me a MP7, and I would purchase it from them. And then I can own that MP7 on a LE request letter that department would have to put out to me. And then I could give it to them to test and use for trials or whatever. And even if they didn't choose to go with it, then I can still legally own that brand new MP7, for example.
And the point being that it's an opportunity for, if you were going to maybe sell them, the whole department a batch of these, right? That's the
Correct.
purpose.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's one way you can get machine guns as an SOT. Additionally, any other SOT holder who gives up their SOT, because you have to renew it every year. So if you don't renew it every year, if you give it up, then every machine gun you own can be sold without a letter to any other SOT within America, obviously. And then additionally, you can purchase pre-1986 machine guns, which are called fully transferable, just like everyone else can. You don't need to be an SOT to do that. So anybody watching this who isn't a felon, or listening to this who isn't a felon, in state laws, apply as well, but they can purchase those as well. And then as a manufacturer, I can make machine guns. So really an unlimited amount. The only thing that it's not a restriction, but if you make, I honestly don't know the number off the top of my head, but there is a number of machine guns that you make, say the number is 100. I don't know if it is or not, but if you make over 100, then it costs extra money in taxes to renew your SOT than it does if you just make one or two.
Mike, hold on. I got to thank a couple sponsors for supporting us in this. Since 1947, a passion for shooting and hunting has driven Hodgdon Powder Company. Did you know they're the largest powder company in the U.S.? And they have a variety of products, and they're always developing new stuff. I know a lot of you are thinking about getting into reloading. So the first place to start is the Hodgdon Reloading Center. Check them out at hodgdonreloading.com. Crossbreed Holsters is your one-stop carry shop for holsters and belts. I personally wear a Crossbreed Holsters belt most days because you need a stiff, thick belt when you're going to carry a gun. Your regular dress belt is not going to cut it. So check out their belts. Obviously, Crossbreed Holsters always has a lot of different styles of holsters, and they do a really good job of working with the gun manufacturers to make sure they have holsters for all those new products coming out. So check them out at crossbreedholsters.com. The newest addition to Springfield Armory's lineup is the XDM Elite 3.8 compact in 10 millimeter. And this is an OSP version, so you can put an optic on it. It can come with the Hex Dragonfly optic, so a red dot on top of the gun. It holds 12 rounds in it. You can also get an extended magazine. The 10 millimeter, more power for carrying, whether that's in the woods or on the streets. Check them out at springfield-armory.com. Now, the other part is, you mentioned anyone, even without an SOT license, be like if people know FFLs, then there's an SOT, which is kind of another license from ATF. But anyone can purchase a machine gun basically the same as they would a silencer if it was made before 1986.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes, if it was registered before 1986.
Okay.
So go ahead.
It's one of those basically lies, misinformation that's thrown around a lot. You can't own a machine gun. And I just want to make sure everyone listening to this, I hope most of you know, but when you hear that, immediately say that's not correct. No, yes, anyone can own a machine. Well, not anyone. Most people can own a machine gun. If you're not a felon, you can own a machine gun.
Correct. And, like I mentioned earlier, I'm old enough to remember that, like, before 1986, we had a Ace Hardware store, and this was in Massachusetts, so let that sink in. We had an Ace Hardware store in my town that literally had SP1s and then a Colt, which is a Colt AR-15 for folks that don't know, and then the full auto version of them, like, next to each other. And there was a little sign that said, like, you have to wait 2 weeks for this one or something like that and spend an extra $200. And I was like, I remember thinking, like, what the heck is that? But obviously I know what it is now.
Man.
But yeah, there's a lot of them out there.
It is wild. And then I guess we get jaded because we're around it so much, but I brought a suppressor on a hunt to Wyoming a few weeks back. And then I had that with the gun in the case, and I had it at the house. I was needing to unpack.
Mhm.
So I was telling somebody in the office, I was looking at, it was just all the gear. It was binoculars and the rifle and some extra mags and the suppressor and a little sleeve. And it was like, isn't it stupid? If you think about this, it's just like binos. It's just like any other piece of gear. I mean, it's literally like a metal tube. But this one is super special and it cannot leave my possession.
Right. I mean, it's insane. And then if you look at like some of the like JK Armament, for example, they make build kits to build your own silencers, and literally the only difference is a drill hole. And yeah, I mean, it's absurd. The laws are just absurd if you actually understand the practical applications of those items.
And this is something that has been around. And it's important also to mention, you said, that 90% of the silencers in registration were purchased in the past 10 years.
Correct.
If people don't understand, we've been making silencers since the 30s or so.
It was before that. It was, I think it was like 1920 was the patent registration.
Okay.
Yeah. So
yeah, I mean, commercially available silencers have been available for nearly 100 years or so, yep, somewhere in that ballpark. And it is kind of crazy the last 10 years. Now we've got more companies making them, certainly more marketing behind it. And like you said, a lot more people covering it, which is great because it normalizes the whole thing. And what I'm hoping is, because you and I know, like, there are somewhere in the neighborhood of 90 to 100 million gun owners in that ballpark. But you and I know that there's like maybe a couple million of hardcore guys who are into silencers and all this other stuff, right? My hope would be my friend who has the one Glock 19 and a bolt gun and a Remington 870 starts going, well, I could own one of those, right? And we're like, yeah, it's a waiting. You pay $200 extra and you wait. It's not a big deal. And probably most people make a big deal about the wait part, but to me, the pain in the ass part to me is the paperwork, because I just don't like paperwork. But once you've sent it in, it's out of sight, out of mind. And then it's like this present that shows up 9 months later.
Exactly. And, it depends on your state, what the weight is. There's a website called NFA Tracker that's really good to check out if you're interested in that. But yeah, I agree with you. And there are many people in my life that, like you said, are gun owners, but not like hardcore gun people. And I've taken them shooting with a silencer or a suppressor, whatever you call it. And they were immediately like, how do I get one? And it was just almost like it sold itself. And I wasn't even trying to sell them one, but it just makes the experience much more pleasant for sure. And again, it's not a huge deal to own one in terms of difficulty. There's a little bit, but not much.
So along those lines, the reason that we have these restrictions, I mean, there's probably a lot of different reasons, but a lot of stuff comes from dumb reasons like people being influenced by movies and TV shows. I mean, if you actually think about it, they're really fun and they make it quieter. They're not super practical for most people, and certainly not for committing crimes.
No,
it makes the gun larger.
Correct. Less concealable, which is a big thing for the ATF in a lot of ways. Yeah, no, I agree. There's very few instances. I don't want to give a number, but I did do research on it before, of NFA items that were legally owned, which is, we have to clarify, that were legally owned by the person using them, being committed in a crime, but it was like under 10, like in the history of the NFA. Yeah. So it's almost never are they used in a crime in any sort of way. So yeah, absolutely.
Statistically insignificant.
Correct.
Along those lines, same deal, braces. Braces keep coming under fire. And again, we don't like braces, or not we, the people trying to ban braces don't like braces because it makes it easier. You can't, very quickly, their logic just falls apart where you're like, so wait, you put a brace on a pistol and it makes it 10 to 14 inches longer, and that becomes more concealable?
Correct. And then if it's If it's too long, then that's bad too. If it's over, whatever, 13.75 inches of length of pull, then that's bad too, because it's bigger. What?
Right. Yeah.
What?
Well, and we've been talking about this for decades, literally decades. I mean, my dad started talking about this decades on Gun Talk Radio. He's like, look, it's either too big, it's a 50 cal, or it's too small, it's a Saturday night special, or it fires too fast, or whatever the thing is. There is no perfect. The perfect is what's the perfect number of rounds in a magazine? The perfect is 0. That's what they're looking for, 0.
Absolutely.
All right, changing gears.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, that's the end game, right? That's what they're looking for. Changing gears here, talking about what's been going on with the world of I mean, your platforms are on other people's platforms. Your channels are on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, all this stuff. Sure. It's a topic we keep talking about because it's wild, the inconsistent censorship on this stuff. What have you been noticing lately? Any changes? Anything getting worse, getting better?
So for me personally, it's been getting worse overall, but there's rays of sunshine, I guess you could say, as well. So for instance, like on Facebook, my page has been taken down twice, historically, and then both times reinstated. And before it got taken down at all, I would reach 1 to 2 million people every week consistently, and pretty much always 2 million people. Every now and then there'd be a slow week. But then when it got put back up, the first time that reach went down to 500,000 per week. Then it got taken down again, and now it's up again with 290,000 followers, and I reach about 100,000 per month. I mean, that's just insane in terms of the censorship / throttling. That said, it's their platform. I understand that. In terms of sort of like the light at the end of the road, there's new applications that, for me anyway, in my audience, have been very good. Probably the best example of that would be Telegram. It's been awesome. People have all the feedback I get there outside of the comment section, because the comments do get a little wild, because it is an open platform. It's an open platform, and people, whatever I post, they see, and whatever they want to post, they can post. So there's no censorship, there's no algorithm. And with that, there's good and bad, right? So there
for better or worse.
Correct. And that some of the negative things are the things people post in the comments. But the fact is, if you follow me there, you see all my posts if you want to. There's no censorship, there's no algorithms, there's no nothing. If you follow me, you see it. And the other one that's been good for me anyway, I realize everyone's different, but Parler has been very successful for me as well. Even after, the takedown and being put back up, I still get a lot of traction there. I reach more people on Parler with 35,000 followers, or 38,000, I think it is now, than I do on Facebook with 290,000.
Wow.
Yeah. And then for me also, my email lists have been really good. They're continuing to grow. I really just mention them at the end of every video, but I mean, every day I get more people signing up for them. So you have to own what you can, you know what I mean? And use what works for you. So like you said, mostly I'm on other people's platforms, but email lists and things like that are something they can't take away. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Mike, I got a couple more companies to thank for their support. It's really important to carry good ammo in your carry gun. Remington's Golden Saber Bonded is a trusted round. And what they do is they bond the copper jacket to the lead core. So it holds together. It still gives you good expansion, good weight retention, and it does its job. It's made in the USA. It's available in 4 different calibers. Check it out at remington.com/handgun. Safariland's 575 IWB holster is pretty cool. It's actually very versatile, and it's designed to fit several different types of handguns, whether that's Glocks, Springfields, M&Ps, SIGs, and also it's optics capable. You can adjust it for Cant. Pretty versatile. And also, of course, Safariland has a lot of other holster options for you. Now, there's a deal that they've got for listeners of Gun Talk Nation. If you use the code GunTalk20Q4, you'll get 20% off at safariland.com. That's GunTalk20Q4. 20% off. And that's 20% off on the gear, the apparel, the hearing protection, the armor, all the stuff at safariland.com. Armscore Rock Island Armory introduced a new gun this year. I got to shoot it and really enjoyed it. It's the STK 100. It's a striker-fired pistol, but you have to understand that the Rock Island folks kind of come from that heritage of a 1911. So they wanted that beautiful shootability, and they put a lot of those things into the STK 100. The beaver tail, but this is a solid aluminum frame, so it kind of gives you the advantages of a metal pistol for the price of a polymer. It's also optics ready, and it's a shooter. I enjoyed shooting it. Find out more at armscore.com. All right, so you and I have pretty good jobs.
Yes.
We get to play with a lot of fun stuff.
Yep.
So I got to ask you, lately, I mean, months this year, what's been some cool stuff that you've gotten in that you've been either impressed by or really surprised by?
Sure. So the one that absolutely comes to mind is I have a Colt LMG, a light machine gun. Which for folks that don't know, it's a 20-inch heavy barreled AR style gun. But the majority of them in the world fire from a closed bolt. The one I have fires from an open bolt. So that slows down the CIPA greatly and makes it super controllable and just really, really fun. I brought it down to a social media event this past weekend, and this is an event with, machine guns everywhere. And the people who fired it, all of them, literally 100% of them said it was the favorite thing that they fired that day. It's just, it's kind of like the 5.56 equivalent to the M60 in terms of just controllability. And
right.
When you get that in a 5.56 form with virtually no recoil, it's just a smile machine. So did it be converted to firing from an open bolt, or that's how it comes? So it was originally designed as an open bolt machine gun by Colt USA. Eventually it was taken over by Colt Canada because they had better R&D and just better capabilities to produce it. They also produced cold hammer forged barrels, which are typically better for machine guns. And so it was designed as an open bolt gun to prevent cook-off, slow rate of fire, all of those things. But when it went to military trials, almost all the militaries that adopted it wanted it in the closed bolt configuration so that you had the capability of safe fire in an auto, like you do with like an M4A1, for example. And I'm just guessing here, but I think they want the ability to mask the fact that there's a machine gun in formation, which makes sense from a tactical perspective.
Okay.
Times on the battlefield, when a machine gun opens up, all the enemy fire gets directed at that machine gun because, of course, that's the mass casualty producing weapon. So if you don't want to open up as a machine gun and you can fire single shot, there is an advantage to that tactically in some scenarios, but the rate of fire just went way up to like 800 or 900 rounds per minute. And I really do think that the open bolt is the way to go for that gun. The Marine Corps, when they looked at it in 2001 for their trials, they did review it in an open bolt configuration. They chose not to go with it, obviously, as you can imagine at this point, but that is the way they wanted it for those reasons. So each unit military has wanted different things.
Yours uses standard AR mags?
Yep, it does. Yep, standard AR mags, drum mags. The gun was designed around the Beta C mag, which is interesting, I guess you could say, because in my experience, those things don't work all that well. But that was what it was designed to use. Very cool.
What year is that gun?
Mine is one of the ones that was produced for the USMC trials, so very likely 2000 to 2001.
Okay, somewhere there. Very cool. What else? What else has popped up on your radar in the last few months?
So the Smith & Wesson M&P 12, which is a bullpup dual tube shotgun. I did not expect to like it as much as I did. I've had it out at the range a lot. I probably put 700 or 800 rounds through at this point. Have had zero issues. And the thing that I really like about it is the fact that it runs flawlessly with mini shells. So I think it's designed with normal 2 3/4 inch shells, 6 rounds in each tube plus 1 in the chamber. But with mini shells, it goes forever. And the technology behind mini shells now has just gotten really good. Like with Aguila and Federal, they're making like mini slugs that are going 1,200 feet per second.
Yep.
Which is crazy.
You're not.
Firepower.
you're not really losing any power. I mean, the slug, it may be a smaller weight slug, but it's still a freaking slug. It's still big and powerful. And I think it's 20 rounds of mini shell in that M&P 12. Yeah, I agree. That was a surprise for us as well. I honestly, and you may, I guess I could say this, so you probably did too. I knew that it existed a while back. But all I knew was it was a new gun. It was called the M&P 12. I assumed it was a 12 gauge shotgun that was in some sort of tactical configuration. And then it was like, wait a minute, this is way different. Yep. And it's kind of fun to see because, I mean, as much as I do like Smith & Wesson products, sometimes they're not maybe as risk takers, perhaps, on some of the new stuff as some of the others.
I agree. They're definitely not like, it's ironic because the company that I would think of in terms of risk taking is Kel-Tec with their designs. And obviously a lot of people say it's a Kel-Tec clone. And I guess in some ways it is. It's definitely similar design for sure. But having handled both, there is a difference between the two for sure, which is reflected in the price points.
Yeah, I mean, and yeah, obviously they look at the Kel-Tec and probably the DP12 and some of the other things that are out there that are in that vein. And they weren't first. Being first is an advantage, but also not being first and looking at what are the pros and cons and what are people saying about it? What do people want in it? What do they wish it was? They have the advantage of saying, well, okay, let's make it to do this. Let's make it to feed mini shells.
Right. Yeah, no, I agree.
That's been one. I had somebody ask me about that gun the other day and he goes, but the price, I go, I know it's more. And if you're saying it's more than a Kel-Tec, most things are.
Yep. And, I've been watching the prices of it in real time at retail stores and the thing stays sold out. So,
right.
Everybody mocked its appearance when it first came out. And I'm like, it's sold out, man. It's always sold out. I don't know what to tell you. If somebody likes it, you might not.
Yeah, if you're saying the price is too high, it turns out you're wrong because it's sold out. Yeah. It's priced perfectly, perhaps, maybe even too low. Right. What about body armor? I noticed lately you've been doing some coverage of body armor stuff. I think we all are kind of like, some people know more than others, but how do you choose, or is it all similar in quality? There's a lot of different companies making it these days.
Yeah, there's a ton of different companies making it these days. And just kind of like how I mentioned earlier, we're in the golden age of firearms. We're in the golden age of armor as well. There's a few reasons for that. One of the big ones is the proliferation of UHWMPE, which stands for ultra high weight molecular polyethylene. 10 years ago, if you were going to get armor, whether it be soft or hard, it was going to have some combination of Kevlar in there. And Kevlar is a branded material from 3M that is very expensive. UHWMPE isn't. Anybody can make it. Anybody can make it anywhere and make it very cheaply. Inexpensively, I guess you'll say. Better word. So there are multiple factories in America as well as overseas making it. And the costs have just come down tremendously. You can get plates that will pass, quote unquote, pass NIJ standards, 10 by 12 plates, hard plates, level 4 that are under $100, and they will actually pass the standards to include back face deformation, which a lot of people question on those plates, but a lot of them do pass those standards. And I mean, it's lighter than it ever was before, and it's just better. So yeah, I mean, it's been quite impressive to see the difference. Even 10 years ago, to get a quality level 4 plate would have been $500 per plate. And it's just come down dramatically since then. But yeah, no, I do a lot of testing of that stuff on the channel. It's something I find very interesting. And if you remember last year, it was Chuck Schumer, I believe at the time, that was trying to take body armor away on the national level. Obviously it's banned in certain states, I believe Connecticut for personal use, but
because it's such a problem,
Well, right. A purely defensive item somehow is a problem to the federal government. So let that sink in. But yeah, I mean, it's just the amount of people buying it are more than ever, of course, because of the cost as well as the weight. It sucks less to carry it than it used to, but it still sucks, but just less. But yeah, I mean, it's been that industry has just blown up over the last probably 2 to 3 years.
Yeah, it has. And it's kind of starting to get to the point where like there's no excuse not to have some. I mean, like just get it. It's part of your kit. Yeah, you're not going to use it much, but it's very accessible. It's not very expensive.
I agree.
Why not?
I agree. It's if you need it, or rather when you need it, you'll really need it. So it's good to have it on hand if that situation arises.
Also, when you really need it, it may have just been 6 months earlier told that you're not allowed to have it. Just saying.
Exactly. Exactly.
Well, good, man. Thanks for the time. It's always good to catch up with you.
Absolutely, man. I'm glad to come on.
So basically, I'm assuming they could just find you anywhere they look up Mr. Guns and Gear.
Yep, and it's spelled Mr. Guns, then N like November gear. Everywhere except for Instagram because they deleted my account a few times as well. So it's Senior Guns and Gear there.
Senior Guns and Gear because it's legal to come across the border on Instagram apparently.
Of course it is.
Something like that.
No papers required.
Yeah, that's right. All right, man. Take care, and we'll talk to you next time.
Awesome. Thanks.
All right, that's it for us. We'll see you next time on Gun Talk Nation.